What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today we're going to be unboxing and reviewing the brand new 2020 MacBook Air. We're also going to compare it to last year's 2019 MacBook Air as well as the 2019 MacBook Pro 16-inch. So nothing special as far as the packaging goes. It's our typical MacBook unboxing experience. We have MacBook on the sides, we have our full configuration on the back. You can see this is the configuration I got for my 2020 MacBook Air. It is the base model, the i3 processor, and we'll talk about all the specs and everything later on in this video. But of course we do have the pull tab to make the unboxing very simple. You don't need a knife or anything. So once you take the top off, you can see you have the MacBook Air right here. I did get mine in the space gray colorway. Inside, we do have our USB-C to USB-C cable right here, along with our Design by Apple in California pamphlets and our small little power brick. And this is a 30-watt power adapter. So let's go ahead and set everything off to the side and let's get into the details about the 2020 MacBook Air. Now, like I mentioned, I did get the base model with the i3 processor, but you can also get an i5 or an i7 configuration for $100 or $250 more respectively. So this year, the i5 did also come with a quad core processor. So you do get quad core compared to dual core in the 2019 model. So for an extra $100, it's definitely worth getting the i5 if you can afford it. And you'll notice throughout this video that the theme of the 2020 MacBook Air is basically more for less. And I'll continue to talk more about performance later on in the video. But first, let's take a look around the body and talk about the build quality and what's the same, what's different from last year, and how it compares to the 2019 MacBook Pro, which is my main laptop of choice at the moment. So first of all, if you have the 2019 MacBook Air, the first thing you'll notice is that the 2020 is a little bit heavier and also a little bit thicker, and that is thanks to the new Magic Keyboard with the scissor mechanism like we saw for the first time in the 2019 MacBook Pro. So on the right hand side, we have our headphone jack, and that's the only port on the right hand side here. And on the left hand side, we do have two USB-C ports right there. Now I will miss not having ports on both sides like on the MacBook Pro. I like being able to charge from either side, so that will be something I will definitely miss. I can already tell with the MacBook Air because we have them both on the left hand side here, and really nothing else to see on the front or the back. We do have upgraded speakers as well on the 2020 MacBook Air, so it should sound a little bit better than previously, as well as the speakers. We do also have improved speakers on the 2020 MacBook Air, so the quality of your voice or whatever you're recording should sound better as well. And that includes FaceTime calls. So if you do FaceTime and things like that, your voice will sound more clear. However, the webcam is that same old 720p quality webcam, which is just not great. It's the exact same as last year, and really no Apple product besides the iMac Pro has a great webcam. So that's kind of expected at this point. Now the keyboard is obviously a huge selling point with the 2020 MacBook Air. Like I mentioned, it is that new Magic Keyboard. This keyboard is absolutely amazing. I love it on my MacBook Pro from 2019. Now the first thing I noticed also here is that the Touch ID button right here, where you put your fingerprint in to unlock the MacBook, is a lot smaller than it is on the MacBook Pro. So maybe it's not as small as I thought, but you could see that the MacBook Pro, that button is obviously larger there, whereas every other key seems to be about the same size. So for some reason, the Touch ID sensor is a little bit smaller. That could be a good thing, could be a bad thing as far as accuracy. Time will tell. We also have the Force Touch trackpad down here, which is a nice complement to the amazing Magic Keyboard. So the setup process is very standard as your typical Mac setup. So we're going to go ahead and select our country, our Wi-Fi, and things like that. And you can transfer your data over from a Windows PC or a Mac, a Time Machine backup, or a startup disk. But for me, I'm just going to not transfer anything. I'm just going to go ahead and start fresh. Then we're going to go ahead and log into our Apple ID, and we should be on our way. So the Touch ID experience seems to be about the same as the 2019 MacBook Pro. It does have that smaller button like I mentioned, but it seems to be about as accurate as, early on to tell, but it seems like it's going to be just as accurate as the 2019 MacBook Pro. But I will be doing a full comparison between these two laptops, the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, so definitely stay tuned for that video, and I will touch on that topic specifically in that video as well. All right, so we're all set up here. That setup process took under 10 minutes, and we are on our way here. So taking a look at the display on the 2020 MacBook Air, it is the exact same display as the 2019 Air. Now, it's not as sharp or as bright as the MacBook Pro here, but it's still solid for that $1,000 price tag. So while not much has changed on the outside aside from the keyboard, the inside is where we see a lot of improvement compared to last year's model. So the 2020 MacBook Air is the first Mac to include Intel's 10th gen processors, which are all faster and more efficient than previous generations. And like I said, I do have the base i3 model here, which has a 1.1 gigahertz dual core processor with turbo boost up to 3.2. And I know a lot of people were like, I saw this a lot on Twitter. People were like, oh, a 1.1 gigahertz i3 for $1,000? Really? Who would do that? But the thing is, this i3 processor will likely be just as fast, if not faster, than the 2019 MacBook Air with the 8th gen dual-core i5 processor. But I know it's going to make a lot of people who know a lot or a decent amount about computers just cringe to spend $1,000 on an i3 processor. So I understand that point, but the thing is, this is targeted at students. The MacBook Air is specifically targeted at students and those who don't know or really care that much about blazing fast, top of the line performance for gaming and video editing and things like that. That's not who this is targeted at. But as you will continue hearing me mention in this video, the additional $100 for the i5 will be well worth it in the 2020 MacBook Air and probably make you feel a lot better about your $1,000 laptop purchase as well. So definitely go ahead and spend that extra $100 for the i5 since it is quad core versus dual core in the 2019, and you will be very happy with that. Now, as for the GPU, we do have the Intel Iris graphics, and this is another area where you will see a nice improvement. So it scores better than the 2019 MacBook Air in every benchmarking test by a pretty nice margin. And even Apple mentions that the new Air will see an 80% improvement in graphics performance this year. So while you shouldn't get this if you want to play, super intensive FPS games like Fortnite or GTA or Call of Duty or anything like that, you can play some less intense games to kill some time if you want to. If you're waiting in between classes or whatever, you can play less intensive games. Now, if you want to game on a MacBook, and gaming is going to be one of the core things you do on that computer, I would definitely recommend the MacBook Pro over the MacBook Air. And again, I will compare these two more in depth in an upcoming video. Now, as for the RAM, we get DDR4 RAM this year compared to DDR3 last year. So even when it comes to memory speeds, you will see an improvement. So we also get 8 GB standard, which will be enough for the majority of people looking to buy a MacBook Air, but you also get a 16 GB option as well for an additional $200. Now that I would not recommend unless you do a lot of video or photo editing, or you just have a lot of applications open at one time. But for most people, 8 GB is going to be plenty. Now, as for the storage size, we start with a 256 GB SSD this year compared to the measly 128 GB SSD from last year. So Apple doubled the base storage this year. And with that, you would expect the price to stay the same or, maybe increase like $100, right? Well, Apple actually lowered the price this year while doubling the base storage. So the first time in a couple years, the MacBook Air is back to a starting price under $1,000. So this base model i3 right here is $999. But of course, if you wanted to go for the recommended i5, like I mentioned earlier, it would cost you $100 more. And of course, the prices can go up if you wanted some additional RAM or storage. But honestly, I don't think the additional RAM or storage is really worth it when you're buying something like a MacBook Air. So with double the base storage as last year, better GPU and CPU performance, a much better keyboard, and a cheaper starting price, the 2020 MacBook Air is an excellent value and is easily the best MacBook for students. It's also worth noting that students get a $100 discount on the MacBook Air as well, making it an even more compelling purchase. So those are my thoughts on the 2020 MacBook Air. I actually love this laptop so far. Of course, I do have the MacBook Pro and I will be doing a full comparison between these two later on. I will also be comparing this 2020 MacBook Air to the 2020 iPad Pro, which I have arriving in the studio later on this week. And of course, expect like a 3 or 6 month later review on this 2020 MacBook Air as well to see how it's held up over time. But yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. Let me know what you think about the 2020 MacBook Air down in the comments below. Are you getting one? Are you a student? Do you prefer the MacBook Pro? Let me know all your thoughts down there in the comments section. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.